Hi everyone! Today I will talk about the truth in John Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn. John Keats, biographical data. First things first, John Keats is an English poet who wrote poems in the Romantic poetry art movement. John Keats was born on the 31st of October of 1795 in London, and he died very young, actually on the 23rd of February of 1821 at the age of 25. He had 4 brothers and sisters, all of whom were younger than him. He was among the most important literary artists of the second generation of Romantic poets, as his poetry was very influential. He lived in the same era as other famous English poets, such as Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley. He died at the young age of 25, and his death was a result of tuberculosis, a disease that was responsible for many deaths 2 centuries ago. Unlike Byron and other contemporary poets of his, who were celebrated across Europe and who received very favorable reviews, he was not generally well received. Despite that, however, he received great popularity after his death and he became one of the most beloved English poets. John Keats, literary style. A very obvious characteristic of his poem is that it is full of sensual imagery and descriptions that appeal to his reader's senses. He presents his poetry in the form of a series of odes. This is typical of the Romantic poets. He tried to evoke feelings in his readership by making use of nature. Despite the fact that he was not well received while he was alive, at present his poetry is enjoying great popularity and is the focus of analysis in English literary circles. Among his most famous works are Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on a Grecian Urn, Sleep and Poetry, On First Looking into Chapman's Homer. Truth in John Keats, Ode on a Grecian Urn. One of the great odes of 1819, which also include Ode on Indolence, Ode on Melancholy, Ode to a Nightingale, and Ode to Psyche. This poetic collection includes Ode on a Grecian Urn, which we will talk about here. Keats found existing forms in poetry unsatisfactory for his purpose, and in this collection he presented a new development of the ode form. He found that the sonnet form did not satisfy him, and that is why he chose to write his poems in ode form. His contact with Elgin marbles led Keats' adoption of ancient Greek ideals and virtues as seen represented in various forms of classical Greek art. Ancient Greek urns are the emphases of this poem of his. This is an indication that he was inspired by the glorious ancient Greek past, which saw a great rise in all forms of art, philosophy, and science. The poem follows the form of 5 stanzas of 10 lines each. This form allowed him to express himself better and highlight the objects or ideas that he wanted to focus on. In the poem, the poet addresses an ancient Grecian urn, describing it and talking about the images depicted on it. Ancient Greek urns or amphorea, such as the one shown on the right, depicted instances from the life of ancient Greeks in an artistic fashion. He focuses on 2 scenes: A lover pursuing his beloved, B. Villagers and a priest gathering to perform a sacrifice. The poet concludes that the urn will say to future generations of Mankit, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know." These lines of the poem constitute the most important ones of the whole ode, as they establish a connection between truth and beauty. Though it was unappreciated when it appeared in publication, the more time passed, the more popularity it gained. Though it did not start with much acclaim, now it receives the recognition it deserves. This is the full poem Ode on a Grecian Urn by John Keats. I will read the final stanza, which includes the most famous and important lines of the poem concerning truth and beauty. O Attic shape, fair attitude, with breadth of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and trod weed, thou silent form dost tease us out of thought, as doth eternity, cold pastoral, when old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe, than ours a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know." Ode on a Grecian Urn contains Keats' two most well-known lines from all of his poetry, namely, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know." These two lines have divided literary critics. Some supported that they feel out of place in a generally exquisite poem, whilst others claim that they are very important as they highlight aspects of the Romantic movement. Keats establishes a link between the two concepts and goes on to state that we should not see them as separate, but rather as a unified concept, truth, beauty. It is implied that only beauty is truth and vice versa, and thus anything that is ugly cannot be true, and anything untrue cannot be beautiful. Only the lie is ugly, and anything ugly is implied as untrue. It is implied in the poem that we are capable of distinguishing between what is beautiful and what is not, and in this way we are capable of understanding truths from untruths or lies. Keats believes that this is something that all people have as an innate characteristic, and that we can all tell the difference between truth and lies, as well as beauty and ugliness. The poem establishes an equation of beauty and truth. In other words, it states that beauty and truth are one and the same, and they should not be thought of as separate. In fact, he claims we should be saying truth beauty and not truth or beauty. Given that this poem is dedicated to ancient Greek urn, it is understood that the poem admires the shapes, figures, geometry, and artistry of the ancient Greek artists who made the urn. As are truth and beauty one and the same, mind and senses and passions are thought to be unified. Keats emphasizes that though in the beginning we may find the depictions in urns as strange, we gradually understand them better as we start relating them to our own subjective experiences. Even though the poem begins with the readers puzzled, by the end of the poem, the reader is left with understanding, as they know what the intended meaning of the poet is. Finally, by this, the poet underscores the shortness of a human life in comparison with the eternal nature of the urn, which stands of both art, beauty, truth, all of which outlast a human lifespan. Thank you very much for your attention.